This video is from the 2022 Loretta Lynn spring trail ride down to Tennessee, and on Saturday night they did a poker run at night, and so I made a video just showing the light setup that I've got on my 2018 300 XC. I've ridden at night before, but never with helmet lights, and this was the first time with a light setup on this bike, so just trying to get it all dialed in before doing the Perry Mountain race later this year, actually racing at night. The headlight on the bike is a Baja Designs Squadron Sport with the wide cornering lens on it, and the headlights, or the helmet lights, are Baja Designs S1 lights that are actually powered by a drill battery that I have in my Camelback during the ride. So you can see I was playing with the height of the headlamps on the helmet, so pointing them up a little bit more. Fortunately, the way I had them rigged up, I could spin them up and down a little. What I found was when you stand up, they tend to point at the ground. When you sit down, they point at the sky. So it took a little bit of fiddling to get them in a place where I liked them. You can see I just turned the headlight off on the bike there, trying to see how much of a difference the light on the bike made versus the lights on the helmets. And really at lower speeds, like the woods kind of tight, twisty stuff, the helmet lights are almost all you need, especially if they have decent range to them. The light on the bike has better range. So once you get moving faster and the steering kind of stabilizes itself so it's not bouncing as much, on the longer straightaway stuff and the high-speed stuff, having a light on the bike is really nice. The other thing in the clip right now that you kind of see, in addition to the distance, is you can see the shadow from the fender. So that, depending on where you're used to looking, like if you're used to looking forward, that's no big deal. I didn't even notice it riding. But there's definitely some weird shadows with having lights in different places. And then this little clip, you can see the shadows in the ruts in the ground. If you turn the light on the bike off, you can't see those anymore because the lights on the helmet are in line with the lights on the bike. So having a good light on the bike actually kind of highlights the terrain a little bit more, which I really didn't realize until this ride. You can see there were a bunch of people just cruising on kind of stock KTM headlights that are not all that great, but riding behind these guys, you can see like the two-stroke smoke and the mud coming off the guy's back tire. All the stuff coming towards you really gets lit up by the helmet lights a lot, and it can be a little bit blinding depending on who's in front of you. If it's dusty, all that stuff's really hard to see through. Stuff that you don't notice at all if you're just riding during daylight becomes pretty blinding. Then you go to pass somebody and of course blow right off the trail. It happens. So this was kind of the first run of the setup. It performed pretty darn well. I'm happy with the range on the helmet lights. It turns out that I really do like the kind of spot beam on those to see a little bit further away rather than just lighting everything up right next to me. It seemed like it was nice to be able to see what I wanted to see and then not be so distracted by maybe stuff that was off the trail or reaching out to grab me or something else. So it kind of kept me focused. The rest of this video is really just kind of running through. I had an open lap. This was, I think, the third lap around the loop. It was, even though the sky looks blue because of the camera, this was full dark at this point. So I recorded a full lap around the course. In terms of the battery setup and the charging setup, this is a carbureted KTM. They really don't have a whole lot of extra juice. The TPI bikes do. They have a better charging system that's entirely DC to run the fuel injection system. The carbureted bikes don't have that. They have the old style split where you've got something like 75 watts of AC and somewhat less than that of DC. Really just there to charge the battery for the starter. So what I did on this bike is something that I think started back in the old RFS 4-stroke days. You can float the ground on the stator. Pretty straightforward to do if you're competent soldering and taking stuff apart. And you convert those AC windings to DC so that then all of your juice is going to the DC charging system. That way the bike can run the fan, it can run the starter if you have to, it can run headlights and that kind of thing, and you're not going to kill the battery. I actually had an issue right when I bought this bike. I did a hard enduro with it, and just using the starter and the fan, granted the fan was on all the time and I was using the starter a lot, just using those two things, I killed the battery fairly quickly, and the charging system really couldn't catch up. I ended up having to put it on a charger when I got home and bring that battery back to life. Ever since floating the ground, I've never ever had an issue with it. It seems to run the headlight on the bike here just fine. It's only, I think it's 26 watts. I think the Pro version of the Squadron is 40 watts, so it's really not all that much juice, especially for what you're getting out of it. The helmet light setup, my setup, I was originally going to use like a lithium jump pack. The Harbor Freight jump pack has a 12 volt output on it, and it's something like a 12,000 or 14,000 milliamp hour battery. It's got a lot of juice. So that's something I was going to try, but I also saw those little adapters you can buy. I think they're intended for like power wheels and whatnot, that you can get for a drill battery and use it as a power source. Well, the Baja Designs lights can take up to a 26 or 28 volt input, something like that. So I just used the 18 volt batteries I had lying around along with that adapter and ran it off of that. It's quite a bit smaller and just a little bit easier to deal with. The only downside is most power tool batteries don't have an automatic low voltage cutoff in them. You can buy a low voltage cutoff, an adjustable one, on Amazon or on eBay. Again, this is all like, if you want to rig something up yourself, you can do this. If you don't want to rig something up and you just want to go buy something, guys like Cyclops and Moto Minded and others all make great setups that do all this for you. You then don't have to spend all the time that I spent breaking things and rigging things up and making it work. It's a little bit easier, just a fair bit more expensive to just go buy something off the shelf. So overall, really happy with how the lights worked out. This is lap 3 of a course that now I knew pretty well, having done 2 laps previously. So I'm able to maintain decent speed on it. I did not really ever feel like the lights were the limiting factor. We'd done quite a bit of riding earlier that day, so honestly my body being beat up and worn out already was really the main thing. I don't think the lights were really holding me up much at all at this point. For some of the higher speed or desert stuff, if you're not in tight woods like this, I've been happy with just having lights on the bike and never really had a problem with it. But in the woods, man, the helmet lights are an absolute game changer. They're always going where your head looks. You can see how stable they are. They're not bouncing around and making you dizzy, giving you vertigo, or giving you the Star Wars kind of jump to light speed feeling so much. They do stick off the helmet quite a bit, and that's something where, like, I think Cyclops is the one who has a fairly small kind of light module that's got the electronics and the battery that you put somewhere else, as opposed to doing something like these Baja Designs lights that are kind of bulky, kind of heavy. In general, I would say if you're going to put lights on a helmet that are heavy, put them on the sides, put them down low, and try to put them along the center line of your head or your neck so they're not making the helmet wobble. One of the other guys who was out on this ride as well was testing the Task Racing light, which worked great, but had one of them kind of mounted on the visor, and it made the helmet rock a lot. So just something to think about, and where you put the lights makes a big difference. Yeah, they add a bunch of weight to the helmet, but if you put them kind of down low and in axis with your head, you're not going to feel it so much. There is always the fear of snagging my head, like going through this section here. The tree's real tight. The light's going to stick out a bit. You don't want to drag your head through a tree. I'm pretty sure I get closer to those trees than I realize. And so when I have 2 less inches on each side of my helmet, I think that I'll probably get pretty close to them. So breakaway mounts are a really good idea. Where something like a GoPro mount or a strong adhesive mount, I mean, I've been pulled off my bike by a GoPro before that was mounted on top of my helmet, caught a branch, and I let go of the bars before the GoPro let go of my head. So something that I still don't have a great solution for. The lights as they're mounted to my helmet for this video are not breakaway. They were intended to be, but they were too weak, so they broke away if you just kind of jumped forcefully. So I had actually strapped them kind of more permanently to the helmet for this ride. So that's the light setup, and really about all there is to say about it. And the rest of this is just closing out the lap. Great event they have there at Loretta Lynn's, and I'll have some more video up later of the actual trail ride with everybody else and ripping around there. So look for that later.